Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of dailydead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and I am joined today by Scott Drebit and Derek Anderson. Today is it's a special episode. This episode's special because it's episode 250. I can't believe we made it. I know, right? Can you? I know. I see Scott over there. He's like, what?
Is wild.
He's like, what? Yeah, we made it. I can't believe it, but we did. We made it to 250. And wow. So you may be saying,
I've been on every one of them.
Derek's been on almost every one of them.
Derek has.
Derek easily beats the rest of the Corpse Club co-hosts. Yeah, easily.
And for that, I hope people enjoy that rather than loathe that. But it's been an honor.
No, yeah. People love you. You're like the Kenan Thompson of podcasting. It's
that kind of works because
he's been doing it forever.
Derek's always doing it with a little laugh and a little smile, and
people love him, and he's been doing it forever.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's still only 19 years old.
So you may be saying, hey, it's 250, so you must have, you're planning on a deep dive into horror, and no, we're not. We're talking Marvel. And it just happened to work out this way that we're talking Marvel. And you may be saying, well, I didn't come here for Marvel, but it's Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And you may be, if you saw it, you know exactly what I'm talking about and why we're going to be talking about it on this episode. And if you haven't seen it, you may be like, well, I don't know. It's Sam Raimi, but it's complete Sam Raimi. And so even I was kind of skeptical about how, much horror we would see in the Marvel universe. But there's a lot of it. We're going to be talking about it. Before we go any further, I will throw out the spoiler warning. It's already been out for a week. I know some people haven't had a chance to catch it, but I think the only way that we can talk about it and have fun with the episode is to jump into spoilers. So we're going to be talking about spoilers from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which of course are all over social media at this point. And we'll probably talk about some of the stuff from the past Marvel movies and TV shows as well. So just throwing that out there. For anybody who, like I said, who's worried about that. And I know I normally am worried about spoilers as well. But my wife convinced me. She's like, okay, we got to drive out. We got to go to the drive-in, which it is a bit of a drive for us, but went to the drive-in to go see it. I went to the drive-in whenever Candyman came out. I can't remember because I was really excited to see it. So I guess last August. And the drive-in screen where I saw it, it was just so dark. I couldn't make anything out. A lot of the scenes, it was at night. And it was just very hard to make out. And so I was like, well, I don't know if I want to see this because I might not be able to see a lot of it. But our drive-in, they upgraded all their projectors and it was great. And so, yeah, we had a good time. And I always love the drive-in. But yeah, it was good to get back to a theater, even though it wasn't inside. But I know some of us go inside as well, and that's okay if you're wearing masks and staying safe. But yeah, it was my first theater experience in over a year. So, and I'll just go first, I guess, since I'm talking about it. I really loved it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what my co-hosts have to think. You know what we usually do? We do about a 30-second review. And for me, it was one of my favorite Marvel movies in that it was clearly a Sam Raimi movie. That he very much brought his Evil Dead sensibilities to this. And I think if you look at all the other Marvel movies, they all feel similar. You could almost say that maybe some of them had the same directors. Some of them have flares, right, of their director. Like I think what do you call it? Thor Ragnarok feels very much like Taika Waititi. Like you could pick that out of the lineup. But Doctor Strange is another one of those where this is Sam Raimi. Like you could easily pick this out, not knowing that he was the director. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. Scott, what did you think?
I wouldn't say I'm as enthusiastic as you are about it, although I did enjoy it, and I actually enjoyed it the more it went on, because the last third of the movie I was almost crying, because that last third of the movie is precisely more of what I wanted in the first 2/3 of the movie, through no fault of Sam Raimi's. It's just, I think they backloaded the more outrageous material for the finale, when if you have someone like Sam Raimi, I'd use him a little more than sparingly in the front half of the movie. But overall, because it has one hell of a like I said, that third act landing. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and very fair criticism we will get into. Derek, what do you think?
I really enjoyed it. It was, like you said, way more of a Sam Raimi movie than I expected. And I'm glad that they gave him room to play. And it seemed like he had a lot of creative freedom to tell the story the way he wanted to tell it, as far as the tone and how much he pushed the horror elements and things like that. And yeah, like you said, Scott, the third act, it just goes so bonkers in the best possible way that I just like couldn't believe that it felt more like a Suicide Squad movie at that point, like the James Gunn version. So it was a pleasant surprise in a lot of ways.
Yeah, now I'm curious because, I think we're all going into this with maybe we've seen a different amount of Marvel shows or movies, or maybe we've read the different comics than others. So Scott, kind of going into this, had you seen WandaVision and Loki? So did you kind of know what you were getting into when you saw the movie?
We had started Loki, never finished, got about halfway through Loki, so kind of know what was going on there. I watched all of WandaVision. I really enjoyed WandaVision, so I very easily fell into what was transpiring. Michelle didn't quite as much, but the film is still structured that someone who even doesn't know or seen WandaVision can still follow well enough.
And I am one such person because I have not seen WandaVision or Loki like at all. And even though my fellow Tuesday movie man, Zach, has been telling me you got to see WandaVision at the very least. And I know that was like one of the first Disney Plus shows to come out in the Marvel universe. So I definitely want to check it out at some point. But there's just that one conversation that Strange has with the Scarlet Witch, where they kind of, I could tell they were referencing stuff from WandaVision, but thankfully they did it in a way that didn't spoil what happens in WandaVision. And also that it didn't like make me feel like I had to see it to understand what was going to happen in the movie. So that was kind of a sigh of relief for me, because this is like, I think this movie really is directly connected to the show, maybe more than any other movie that we've seen yet. But I think that'll be a recurring theme moving forward, is that it's all very connected.
I think it's interesting because what they've adopted is kind of a similar policy to what they have in the comics, right? You see those big comic book events, whether it's Secret War, Infinity Wars, Age of Ultron, whatever it is, they have the core books, which will like tell you the main story. They have all these secondary books. So it's like, if you just want to read, Age of Ultron, you might, go through those regular core titles, but then maybe something will happen in Spider-Man. So for people who are watching Spider-Man, you'll see something show up in there. I know somebody on somebody's going to listen and be like, it doesn't happen in Spider-Man. I'll switch my examples. King in Black, the recent Venom one, and those symbiotes kind of like attack the Earth and are attacking New York City with Null, and that spreads all over the place. So if you want to read it in Spider-Man, you can read it in Spider-Man. If you want to see what's happening to Miles Morales, you can see that. But you could just read the Venom books. And I think they're doing that a lot here, where, you can just watch the movies if you want, but you get a lot more of that backstory if you're watching the TV show.
Well, and also I think looking back on it too, you get a lot more context for why Wanda is, or how Wanda is feeling, whether her actions are justified or not. That's, a whole other kettle of fish to bounce across the basketball court. But that first part, rings true about her.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that I would say that if you're really into these characters, that the shows are required viewing, even though you don't have to, right? If you really want, like, it will be for someone who's been watching the movie. It's like, well, what happened to Wanda? Well, you got to watch, 6 hours or whatever of WandaVision to see all that character development and that change. It's not required, but it certainly does help and kind of enhance that character arc.
Well, yeah, because it's completely, after the events of WandaVision, it becomes completely psychological. As to, because are we past the spoiler?
Oh, the warning's been up. The flags have been thrown. Spoil away.
As she turns into Scarlet Witch, it just really gives much more context when you can see the progression of how she gets to that point. And it really is the psychosis that she has is a continuation of it from WandaVision. She says everything's hunky-dory at the end of WandaVision, but it's clearly not, as we find out by Strange's first interaction with her already. So it really, if you see the show and what she goes through, it really it plays without it, but it really adds, because I think it's essential if she's going to be and she is accused of these horrible crimes and unjustifiably committing these horrible crimes, then I think it's only fair that she should have her say as well for the audience. There should be, like, both should be presented, I think, and I think knowing those events in WandaVision really helps that here.
Yeah. Without it, I feel like the action does move along a little quickly. It even took me, I'd say, a minute as I was watching it, especially when she starts attacking the fortress. I'm like, wow, that escalated quickly. They didn't give her and Doctor Strange much time. It's like, well, like I said the wrong thing. Like, this is a trick. So, like, I'm showing up. Like, give her over or else. And that happens fast. I mean, this movie runs at a pretty decent clip. I think only in the first act, though, does it feel like maybe it's running too fast. Once we get to, once we get into more of the multiverse aspects and Wanda's going after them, it feels like, or even when she starts attacking the fortress and she gets in and we see her start I know I'm jumping around, but I love the puddle scene where they're covering the puddles and she's just coming through them. And that's so, from the cinematography to the angles that are used, the whispers, like, it feels like Evil Dead in the Marvel universe. And it's just, it was so cool to see.
And a little bit of Drag Me to Hell in there too.
Oh yeah.
Well, and then when the gloves come off and she just lays waste to this band of superheroes, led by Professor X, and when she snaps Charles's neck, I laughed out loud in the theater. I think I actually cackled. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you just killed off Professor X because you can.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those interesting things because from the comics, I mean, it's known that Wanda is, the most powerful character or one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel universe. And so there's really not much, including, Charles Xavier, that can stop her. And I think, again, it's interesting because we have, and I think about this like Godzilla, right? Like, everybody sees Godzilla in different ways, like their favorite Godzilla, depending on when they were born. It's like, is Godzilla scary or is he happy? Does he box with a smile or does he look more like a monster? And, people's superheroes are going to be a little bit different, right? Like, I mean, even like with Tom Holland, like, we don't see that origin with Uncle Ben, but if you grew up earlier, if you read the comics, like, Uncle Ben's like a real key key part of it. And, with Wanda, I think a lot of non-comic book readers are less familiar with her. So you see her go, from a character which is, helping along in some of the Avengers movies, but not necessarily like leading. And so it may seem a little like, well, how can she do all of this? But no, at least according, to the comics and what we've seen there, she's this powerful and she can take them all out. So I think that was very interesting to watch.
Kind of reminds me of Phoenix from the X-Men universe, where just having Professor X there just reminded me of like how they were always worried that Phoenix would destroy the world, and that she had this destiny, this prophecy where she started off, as one of them, but then she had the ability to like take it to a much higher level than anyone else. So it kind of almost felt like a rematch there with Professor X and the Scarlet Witch, but it still didn't end well for Professor X.
Yeah, and that's happened throughout the comics. I mean, it's different, like they're different powers, but I mean, and the thing too is Wanda's a mutant, right? Magneto's her father. And again, because of the like rights, they couldn't do that back when they first did the Avengers movies. But like, yeah, her and
call up Ian McKellen.
Her and Quicksilver are siblings, and what do you call it? And Magneto's their father. So yeah, so I think it was really cool to see that. I mean, seeing Patrick Stewart back as Charles Xavier after Logan, like I didn't think he was going to do another one. And so it kind of makes sense that they bring him here in this cameo, because it's like it's him, but it's not him. And did either one of you notice that they brought him in his very first intro as like the X-Men cartoon theme song?
Yeah, and they had that in the credits at the end, and I'm like, oh, that's what that was, because it's such a great, like,
I know, I was
have
dying.
that on one of my playlists. It's such a great song.
Yep.
And then snaps his neck.
Yeah, that was when I realized the movie was going to go there way more than I expected it to, when they actually like introduced this amazing like all-star roster of alternate universe heroes, and then just proceeded to like with the moment when when she says what mouth, and then he
for Black
himself.
Bolt.
That was like, oh man, they are not playing around. Like they really just let Sam just go off, and I'm sure they might have had that idea anyway, but to like let Sam just do it, as it didn't even feel really like a PG-13 movie at that point. It felt like something you would see in the Suicide Squad or something like that.
No, we'll talk about that more later. There's a lot of what do you call it?
There's your hot topic.
There's a lot of discourse about the rating. But we'll talk about that more later. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, some people, have complained kind of about that a lot of the movies are kind of like hinging on the cameos, but also, I think, again, for a lot of people who read the comics, you're used to like characters weaving in and out. So, to see something like, I never expected to see something like Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, and like that scale was crazy. And I think you can do great small movies, you can do good big movies. I don't think you should, hinge on your cameos, but I think you can use these cameos to kind of enhance it, and also as a way to kind of introduce and to show that they're going to be in this world. So I liked seeing Inhumans introduced. I like that we got Reed Richards. And then of course we got a new take on Captain Marvel, and we have Captain Carter. So I thought it was really cool for them to bring those characters in and kind of show the different possibilities we have, because Loki, they open up the multiverse right at the end of Loki and Sylvie do. So we see the multiverse start to expand. We know that there are all these other universes. So this really, in my opinion too, it's not just about they're not doing cameos for cameo's sake. I do expect that like this multiverse trend will continue and come to like a peak in a future like Avengers Infinity War style movie.
And we now know that Reed Richards can be pulled apart.
Oh yeah, into like little pasta.
Yeah, that was a rather creative kill.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
Loved
I did not see that coming. Because I had seen the in months before there had been like a fan campaign to get John Krasinski to play Reed Richards, like, when they eventually do a new Fantastic Four movie. But the fact that they actually did it, I had no idea. And then it just seemed like, wait, is this real? Like, is this just like a, something you'd see on Twitter? Like when someone just put his head on there, and it's like, oh, they went with it. So yeah, that was, and then
he's
proceeded to kill him.
He's great as Reed Richards here, because it seems like I hope so anyway, that he's playing it slightly campy. It seems like it here because it's a Sam Raimi movie, right? So I mean, it's already ridiculous enough as it is, right? And what's going to happen to him is even more ridiculous, right? So I think he plays it like slightly elevated. I think if he was to become the actual Reed Richards, that he might take, a slightly different tact with it.
I think so. And I think also because these characters, they already show that they did things differently than the Marvel universe we're used to, because they killed Doctor Strange. So they got together and did something that we would see, traditionally uncharacteristic for these, types of heroes on this earth. It's different. So I think they're going to tweak it a little bit. I mean, he is the kind of the smartest person in the world or the universe. And so I didn't get that vibe from John Krasinski in this, but he talked for like a minute, right? And so we are going to get him, though. I think. I mean, I saw it in the trades. We know that those things can change, but it looks like he's moving forward, and he's going to star in the Fantastic Four movie.
Wow! So it's all happening. Yeah, it's ever
it's
expanding.
All happening. Like Derek's had this in his dreams for years.
And you know what? We advanced pretty quickly, and that's okay. We can jump around, but I have to throw it out there for my man Wong, because Benedict Wong, he's great, and he's we see him kind of build up. And again, you could say they're these little cameos, but it's kind of what I like, is that we see, him kind of evolve from the first Doctor Strange movie. Shang-Chi, we see him in that. He becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, right, with Doctor Strange out. And we see him kicking ass throughout this entire movie, where he's a really solid supporting character. And so it's been fun to watch his character evolve and see him taking on that big monster in the beginning, as a Sorcerer Supreme. I really did enjoy that.
Yeah, and I love the banter between him and Strange is so good, because the history of that relationship, and it feels like Wong is so like superior to Strange at this point with all of his abilities and everything. So it almost feels like Strange is kind of this like trouble child that he always has to try and keep in line, and it's really interesting, like how that whole dynamic plays out. And then, yeah, just seeing how relentless he is too, like in the whole final act when he's going up against these giant monsters. And it's, he really does hold his own in this movie, because he's kind of on the front lines with the Scarlet Witch for like the whole second half of the movie. And there's some really intense moments there, but, and he also brings some good humor into it too. So that character has had one of the coolest arcs, I think, of any Marvel character. Like if you're just looking at over the course of like 1 to 3 movies, that's a really substantial arc.
What's Strange's official title? Doctor Strange assistant assistants to the Sorcerer Supreme? Like, what's it say on his office door? You know what I'm saying? Like he's
right.
He got punted from the position. So
maybe it's former, maybe it's like when you're president and you just like you retire.
The artist
like
formerly known as Sorcerer Supreme or something like that.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. It feels like they don't even really know how to categorize him. And he's always doing things that are frowned upon by the committee, by the other people in this world. And so it just feels like he's really just kind of gone rogue and like nobody really knows what to do with him.
And he also saved the universe. So, I mean, in some cases too. And I do love that about his character. His character's it's interesting because his character is very like, and the what do you call it? The goatee doesn't hurt him, but he's kind of like replaced Tony Stark, and he's cocky, but he's cocky in a different way. And so I do like how Benedict Wong has played him, and how the Marvel Universe has played this character, and that he's a big presence. He was in the latest the No Way Home, the latest Spider-Man movie, and so he has kind of taken up that mantle. And he does, like I said, he is cocky, but in a different way. And I do like how we see that here, is that, he's kind of faced with the choices he's made, both good and bad, throughout his life, right? He's saved the world. He still can't, and he sees the love of his life get married. And he sees throughout these multiverses how all these different versions of him have made the wrong choices. They've killed people. They've destroyed entire other universes. And so him coming kind of face to face with that is, it was very interesting for them to see them do this in this movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like the butterfly effect, where you see how one decision changes everything, and it's very interesting seeing how strange. Yeah, even though you're going to all these different universes, it feels like you can be somewhat of the same person, and that you still make the same mistakes. You just do it in a different way, or you're more like evil or corrupted, but you still end up almost doing the same thing. So it's kind of interesting how it's not just so drastically different. But yeah, that's I definitely got that Tony Stark vibe from him now. And I think part of it was the goatee as well, just because that was like the Downey Jr.'s iconic look with that character. But I definitely feel like he's the one that's kind of omnipresent in a lot of the Marvel universe, which makes sense because of his magical abilities. And with Tony, it was all about the technology. And so he's still able to like mentor Spider-Man, but now it's like, rather than from a financial standpoint or technology, it's coming from like this ancient magic. So it's almost like a different side of the same coin.
Yeah, and he even screwed it up with Spider-Man. He couldn't even perform that spell.
Nope.
I like the characters in this world of Doctor Strange. And I think, for instance, in the case of Wong, he's a character that I don't mind seeing in the other films, because the Strange films and Shang-Chi, there does feel like kind of an organic connection between those movies. That I feel that this one ties into, I think especially ties in the first Doctor Strange and everything else that's come after it nicely. And I like the cameos that are here, because I like the side characters in this part of the universe. I really do. I don't find they're as flashy necessarily, but they're rich.
Yeah, I think this movie, Sam Raimi and then the script from Michael Waldron, I think they do a great job of making these characters enjoyable to watch. I think regardless of the script or the interactions, there's kind of a built-in audience for Spider-Man or for Batman or for whoever, right? But there is extra work and extra skill required to get us to really care about these characters. And so I really do enjoy how very few people know America Chavez, but they're able to bring her in and have really meaningful and interesting interactions between her and Doctor Strange, to the point where we can get a spin-off with her. We can see her show up in another Marvel movie, and it feels like not only that we know her, but we like this character. They've been able to do that successfully with Wong, and of course, and even Bruce Campbell gets his cameo.
It's a papa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And one of like the best end credits scene. Even if people were waiting for another like massive superhero to show up, I was so happy that it was Bruce with another, like, with that kind of Evil Dead 2 look into the camera. That was just perfect.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, it's like I said, it
Finally
was
over.
great. It seems like, and I guess that's the thing too, is that it seems like Sam Raimi was really having a lot of fun with this. That's what I get with it, is that, you know, sometimes it kind of looks, and maybe again it's all just acting, but it looks like this was a fun production. It looks like the people who were involved in it, whether it was writing it or the actors or the director himself, had a lot of fun putting this movie together, and so, yeah, so, you know, we talked a little bit about America, and I do think that, you know, and I really did enjoy that interaction. You know, we see from the very beginning that Doctor Strange tries to kill her. She's apprehensive about meeting the new one, and he's like, prove it. And she shows the dead body. I'm like, oh, that's coming back as soon as I saw it. Now, I didn't guess. I hadn't seen any of the trailers. I don't watch them, so I hadn't guessed that he was going to possess it. I thought that maybe it was going to come to life and start wreaking havoc on Earth. But I love it even better that he uses it to take on Wanda in the finale. It's just what a cool, fun scene.
And the fact too that when he becomes zombie Strange, that he uses all of the evil souls that look very much like Army of Darkness type, or even Evil Dead 2 type Deadites, where they just have that almost like a claymation look to them, but they're also digital.
And they kind of talk in that same way too, you know, like we'll swallow your soul and stuff like that.
The frenetic, and then he harnesses them and uses them as like giant bat wings or like a giant kite to like fly over to the mountaintop. It just felt like so, like,
Love that a giant kite, a giant bat kite. Whee!
Yeah, but again,
I just love it. Yeah, it was like really like you almost forget that it's a Marvel movie, and I love Marvel, but it like this was such a different type of Marvel movie where it just had a different energy to it, and it felt like they just really, you know, everything was like as much horror infused as they could make it. Like even stuff that you wouldn't expect to really go there. It had that, like the way that Scarlet Witch moved when she was pursuing them, and she almost had like a contortionist kind of movement when she was coming through things, and
like those little twists you'd see in like The Grudge or The Ring. It's all those little contortions and those little cracks as your head twists and all that.
And that's and again, that just brings it to my main problem with the movie is that when you start to get like the heavy duty Raimi stuff for that third act, you start to realize, you know, I didn't really have much of this in the first two acts at all, and it almost made me feel like sad. Like you had Sam Raimi, and if you had just put in the script, do more Sam Raimi stuff in the first two acts. And I know it's not structured that way because it's building up to this amazing climax, but the climax is so amazing that it just made me wish that the first two had a little bit more of his flavor to it. And it's not his fault. It's completely based on what the activities are.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and one of the things too that you know, and we kind of overlooked it, and I do assume online it gets overlooked a little bit. I'm not online enough. I'm sure there's millions of people talking about it, but I feel like what the main points have been talked about is kind of like Wanda's arc, the cameos, the revival of Zombie Strange, but the musical battle between the two doctors it's one of those things where, and again, I wonder how much input Sam Raimi had on some of this, because you can imagine somebody else trying to take this on, another filmmaker, and really not being able to make this work in the way that Sam Raimi did, because it would have been a gamble for a lot of this stuff, but especially that scene, especially to have a musical note battle. That worked out, and it was just so incredible and fun to watch. And again, something you'd never expect to see or see in a Marvel movie. And that was a lot of fun. It reminded me of the Japanese house movie from the 70s. Remember, there's that scene, and it's not exactly the same, right? But there's that scene where there's like the piano starts moving and playing on its own. And it gave me some of those. Although actually House kind of, it was pre-Evil Dead. So it feels like that was an inspiration for the Evil Dead series itself.
Oh, no doubt.
That is interesting.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. So
sorry, go ahead, D.
No, it's just moments like that, though. It's one of those movies where sometimes when I see like a new superhero movie, there's just so much content to like wrap your head around and absorb that it's hard to like think back to like those memorable moments throughout, because there's so much context to get through. But this one, it actually felt like there's so many moments that are just unforgettable because it's just very unique, and it's kind of its own story, even though it's part of this very long line of Marvel movies and setting up things to come and all that stuff, which every Marvel movie does. But this one just felt a little bit more, I guess, special. And maybe that is because, as horror fans, Sam Raimi is this national treasure to us already, but it just felt a little bit different in a good way for like moments like that, where you're like, oh, that's so cool that they just took the time to do that. The music battle in this movie, and it just makes it stand out a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this movie, I can't wait to rewatch it. And I don't say that about many of the Marvel movies, to be honest. A lot of them for me can be one and done. The TV shows can. I go back to some from time to time, or I may leave something, play while I'm working. But, a few movies that I'll go back to, like I do love Thor Ragnarok. So I've gone back to that one. I do love the first Spider-Man. And Black Panther I've seen multiple times. And then this will be another one that I'm really excited to get back into.
It'd be interesting.
And
sorry, I was just going to say,
no, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm really interested to watch it again too. Having seen it, to see if I'm okay, the same, or better or worse with the pacing of those first two acts, because as it sits right now, it really seems like not only is the amount of activity, of course, amped up in the third act, but there seems to be a real energy jolt as the movie progresses too. And I don't know if it was just me reacting to getting that old school cinema Sam Raimi thing, or if that was like an intentional thing that was occurring.
I'm curious too, because the third act is so out there that I don't know if like it just made everything else pale in comparison to it, or if it is like maybe there is too much setup at the beginning. Like I would be curious to go back knowing what we know and see how it plays the second time. And I think that would be interesting to find out, like, but yeah, because it really just like takes it to a whole nother level in that third act, where between the alternate universe massacre and the Elizabeth Olsen pursuit, when she's just like hunting them down, like there's just so many, and then zombie Strange, like it's just a nonstop like highlight reel at the end. So it does make me wonder, like, well, did they maybe? But that it's weird though, because for a Marvel movie, it feels like a little bit on the shorter side too. It's just a little bit over 2 hours. And it feels like they kind of compacted more into a shorter runtime. So I'm not really sure what the takeaway would be, but I'd have to watch it a second time just to find out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it moved at a pretty decent pace, but well, again, we'll find out when we watch it that second time. But just because, I mean, it starts with the attack. It starts with that multiverse battle, and then it just kind of goes right into it. So to me, there's like ups and downs.
You know what it is? Maybe it's not even so much the pacing as it is the plot or lack thereof. It kind of felt like it felt like there wasn't real the plot just kind of felt ambling. It's like, okay, we're going here, and then now we're going here, and then now we're going here, without any kind of like end game in sight, kind of. So maybe that's why the middle to me just seemed kind of like, it didn't seem like there was a lot at stake, or because there was less at stake, it seemed like it was sagging more.
Yeah, makes sense.
It could be, I don't know. I got to watch again, but that's kind of the initial feeling. And again, all in retrospect, because that goddamn third act is so amazing. Truly so amazing that it just makes you go back and for yourself criticize everything before, going, why if you had more of this earlier, like it would have been just. But as it stands, there are moments in this that I will absolutely cherish. And when I watch it again, there are moments in this that I will watch again and again and again.
Yeah, and I think the hopefully the best thing we'll get out of this, which would be nice, is Sam Raimi making more movies. I think it's been about 10 years since he's made one, and whether he makes a Doctor Strange sequel, which I think is in the cards. I mean, this movie's doing really well. It seems like he had a lot of fun with this, and clearly, by the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we're not done. We know that Wanda is kind of buried, but not dead, because nobody stays dead in the Marvel universe. And Doctor Strange has a new eye due to his exposure to the Darkhold. And then we also have a mystery woman who is introduced in the mid credits. Charlize Theron is joining the Marvel universe, so that'll be interesting. She is, for those that don't know, she is. I don't. Playing. Do you want me to say anything, or you don't want anything?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. She is his wife from an alternate dimension, and a sorceress supreme herself.
What's her name?
Clea. Clea.
Clea.
Yeah.
Well, like the Jamaican fortune teller lady.
I think that's Cleo, isn't it? I think it's Miss Cleo. Yeah.
Oh, Miss Cleo.
It's close. Sorry. But yeah. So so we know that they're
your
already
Marvel team up.
So we know that they already know where they want to go with Doctor Strange for the next movie, as well as this movie's doing, and with him like as the new Tony Stark for this phase of the Marvel cinematic universe. I think we know, and it says Doctor Strange will return. I believe them when I see that, but
I hope so. The way it ended,
but
that's just the ending for his character.
I mean, hey, we saw Masters of the Universe, and Skeletor pops up at the end of that, and we got nothing. So
hey, where's my Remo Williams too, man?
So I mean, I think the question really is Sam Raimi coming back, and if not, what's he doing next? And I just hope I hope he does whatever he wants to do at this point, and hopefully more horror movies, because we miss him.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe Spider-Man 4 now that the multiverse is open.
I'm good. I'm good.
Come on. But yeah, as long as he just keeps directing, because he obviously it felt great that he got to direct a new Marvel movie, because without with the success of the original Spider-Man trilogy from the 2000s, like that helped pave the way for Iron Man and the whole cinematic universe. Like the popularity of those movies definitely was a major contributor to superhero movies being so popular now. So it kind of felt like him saying, here, hold my beer, I'm going to go show you that I can still do this. And I think he just he'd made one of the best ones we've seen in this cinematic universe. So definitely, whether it's another Marvel movie or hopefully a new horror movie, I'm excited to see what he does next.
See, after the one viewing, I think I'd have it somewhere in. It's one of the better ones. I don't know if it's one of the best ones yet, because like I said, that's
I totally agree with that.
That script is kind of staring me in the face, and I'm hoping that going back, maybe that script is either going to be nicer to me or it's going to be more unkind. It's hard to say.
I think the interesting is there are some movies that I think maybe are better movies, but I think this is one of the most fun movies in a way that, like I said, that I feel like is rewatchable. So, I would agree with you, flawed, but rewatchable. But like I said, like Thor Ragnarok, to me is also, and I think that like some of the Captain America movies, like Winter Soldier, a lot of people agree is one of the best Marvel movies. I don't necessarily return to it. I agree it's a very well-made movie, but I tend to have more fun with Thor Ragnarok. And so I think this is one of those that, like I said, I'll return to often.
I
think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. So let's look at, speaking of multiverses, let's talk cameos. You guys probably spot them all better than I. So I'll take the easy one and say, of course, because it's a Sam Raimi movie, where there's Sam Raimi, there has to be a Bruce Campbell, and Bruce Campbell as Pizza Papa, Pizza Papa always gets paid, is of course just, another one of those great, wonderful little Campbell cameos. And he even gets some good old fashioned slapstick going on in the background when he moves to the background. Some tribute to Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, that was the one too where I was like, going into it, I'm like, he's got to be in this. How are they going to use him? And I think it's like the best Campbell cameo yet. Like, I don't know how you can top that. Like, I know he had some cool ones in the Spider-Man movies, but that one like totally, it was its own scene. It almost felt like more than a cameo.
This is his biggest prick, I think, Pizza Papa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's that they need to put that in Evil Dead the game.
Pizza Papa always gets paid.
Yeah, and I'm going back and forth on what my favorite cameo is, since you took that one. And I'm going to go with the bland one. I think I'm going to go with the bland one. I really enjoyed seeing Reed Richards. And, it's just, I was okay with, I did laugh too. I definitely laughed now that I'm thinking about it. When it was just me and Christy in the car, but I laughed when Professor X got his head snapped, because it's just like, they did this. They actually did it. But I think there's, like I said, to me, and just thinking about my younger self reading these comics, and I always go back to the fact that, like, I used to get picked on for reading comics. Like, it was never the cool thing. Like, people hated me because I read comic books, and I always used to dream about, what those things would be like. And I never expected them to be movies. So, these movies are definitely a bit of magic for me. So to see, to be able to see them kind of pull all these characters together. And it wasn't the fact that it was John Krasinski as Reed Richards. It's like, as soon as I said they were in the Baxter building, I'm like, oh, I know where they are. And so it's little things like that. And it's, I think it's important, to like say that these movies don't live and die by like the cameos and by the little hints and stuff. But I think that when done well, the way they're able to weave these things in and out, it's magic. You don't get it with, with any other, you don't get it with Star Trek. You don't get it with Star Wars. I know they're all trying. You don't get it with DC. What the Marvel Universe has done is definitely something special.
Yeah, the Reed Richards one is hard to beat, but I'll do a deep dive and say the Ultron robot or the robot.
We didn't even talk about the little Ultrons. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because I was like, that looks really familiar, the whole design of the robots. And then I'm like, oh, is that Ultron? And apparently, according to some online research here, it was Ross Marquand from The Walking Dead. And I believe he portrayed Red Skull
He did.
most recently, who voiced the Ultron robots this time around. So that was kind of a cool little throwback. And
why wouldn't they get
Spader?
Why wouldn't they get Spader to do it? I don't understand.
Because he was too expensive. He's probably too expensive.
Too expensive for
apparently
for the Marvel movie.
They could have been Robert California robots if they had if they had gotten Spader. And the Invisible Woman, she could have been there too. We just didn't know it. I was kind of wondering if we would see the other Fantastic Four.
And she just watched her husband turn into blue noodles.
That would be pretty horrific. And then it's so you never know. But I'm excited though. It's I love the Fantastic Four, and it's been a long time since just the fact that they can be involved in this cinematic universe will be very interesting moving forward. It's going to be because then you're like, oh, Dr. Doom's going to show up at some point, who's I think one of the best villains of any comic book. And there's just so much to play. There's so many great villains in Fantastic Four, so I'm excited. And they always were like crossing paths with Spider-Man in the comics too, so I think it just makes perfect sense now that they have the ability to use them. That
he was in the Fantastic Four at one point.
Oh, like as an honorary member?
Yeah, nice. Sometimes they'll switch out the roster.
Just to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, they did it with the Avengers too. Sometimes the Avengers, I remember, had like Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Red Hulk. And it's like, sometimes you get a different lineup. It was what General Ross becomes Red Hulk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And the Abomination is coming in the new She-Hulk series, I believe.
I did hear about that. Yeah, we have that. And then, because we always keep things we only talk about horror here on Corpse Club. We do have a Blade movie coming soon. So, we're going to unlock some more of that. And if you haven't seen Moon Knight, that there's a good bit of horror there as well. So, we have more horror coming, and that's already here in the Marvel universe, and more to talk about. Have you guys seen Moon Knight yet?
I have not. I have to watch WandaVision first.
It's good. Yeah. Brian loves it. And I did too. It was fun.
Yeah, it's good. I think we're about halfway through, something like that. But very good show. It quite a bit.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice.
Yeah. And yes, it's there's a lot of shots in it that lend themselves very much to horror. Moon Knight was one of my favorite comics when I was a kid. I would go through little periods of intense comic interaction with one, with one brand, kind of like when you like one band for a while and then you move on to another band.
I did that. Yeah.
Right.
With bands and with comics.
With comics. So, it was X-Men
Ford and Chevy
for a while. But Moon Knight was one that always caught my attention right from the start, because it always seemed to align itself more with horror. It was all black and white, and he had the white glowing eyes, and there was just a lot of, and I was a horror loving kid. So that was a comic that I naturally kind of gravitated towards. And I think the show has captured it really well. And of course it's Oscar Isaac. So
yeah,
what's not to love?
No, he's great in that. He's really great.
And Ethan Hawke is terrific.
He is too. Yeah. No, it's a good show. So yeah, there's lots to see. And I would also say, just to promote comic books for our listeners, a lot of this stuff too, it's on, I think Kindle Unlimited has a lot of it, or they have they have Marvel Unlimited. So it's kind of like a subscription service, and you can catch up. Like the only thing they don't have is like new comics, like within like the last year to 6 months. most of those you have to pay for, but otherwise the older stuff, like even the more recent Secret Wars is available, Age of Ultron, the old Moon Knight comics, like they have so many of them. So like if you're looking to dive in, I'd say kind of look for one of those trades. And you can, do a quick Google or whatever to be able to find out. But like there's a Moon Knight trade, there's a Tomb of Dracula trade. There's all kinds of comic book collections that are worth your time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's the digital library is so nice because used to, as much as I love the going to comic book shops back in the day and finding all the back issues, it makes it so much readily available to just be able to read it on your iPad or your computer, and then still collect the physical stuff too. So it's kind of the best of both worlds right now.
Yeah. And so I think with that, we've talked through Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and in pretty good detail. So we're going to wrap this episode up. I do want to thank my co-hosts for being with me on this momentous episode. We made it to 250. I want to thank our co-host who could not be here. We couldn't have done this without you. And of course, I want to thank our listeners, our Daily Dead readers. We made it here. Again, when we started this, it was, the goal was, was friends and peers getting together to talk horror. It's still what we do. I think this has been, a lifesaver. And as I've mentioned before, this stuff has been kind of like essential to me during the pandemic, because this is my way to keep in touch with people. I haven't seen Derek. I haven't seen Scott in ages. And so this gives us an opportunity. It forces us to hang out together virtually.
Mandatory.
Yes, mandatory hangouts. But like I said, it's always a pleasure, and I'm so glad we get to do it. I do want to also thank Brian, our engineer, who helps us out each and every episode. And I want to thank those of you who've signed up for a Corpse Club membership. You keep us going. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com. You can check out all of our episodes. You can also sign up to become a Corpse Club member. We have a membership card, a pin, a t-shirt, and you can pick an episode topic. You want to hear us talk about more Marvel movies? We'll do it. You don't have to pull our legs. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review really helps. You can also find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime. We're at contact@corpseclub.com. On Twitter, we're at Daily Dead News. We're at Corpse Club. And on Instagram and Facebook, we're under Corpse Club as well. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, stay scary.